I don't know what if it's my algorithm, a lot of doomerism around the AI bubble of just the hyperscalers and the debt and where's the ROI and the concentration of customer base and revenue, OpenAI, Anthropic, and it's not real or it's too much risk. And I just felt we're not talking about the actual end demand for it. The end customers buying this. So the only way that this bubble like truly collapses is if demand it just implodes. And I just don't see that. There's near infinite demand for AI intelligence. We would have thought the world, 20% unemployment, cures for cancer, and we have none of that right now. So it's so powerful that you should buy it. And here's an example. We can't even control it. Imagine what it could do for your business. So
Nice.
yeah. Oh man. So y'all go to back to school next week too? We start on Tuesday.
Yeah, Wednesday for us.
That's cool. The kids are actually on the pool right now, like with the fam. The cousins are in town, and so we went to like a local water park last night. So that was fun. We're just trying to get all the things in. So did y'all do anything special?
Been trying. We tried to. We actually were going to go to the water park on Monday, but one of his friends came back in town, and he said he'd rather go hang out with him than the water park. I was like, oh, all right, okay. So yeah,
Sorry.
so we forego the water park to play with a friend, but all good
Nice.
choices. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the schedule. That's for sure coming back for us. But man, it's been a interesting week. I know you were talking about some things that caught your eye. It was Black Hat. And so I've been on a lot of the security breaches, like the LLM's hacking, but I feel like there's been, I don't know what if it's like my algorithm, a lot of doomerism around the AI bubble of just, the hyperscalers and the debt and where's the ROI and the concentration of customer base and revenue, OpenAI, Anthropic, and like it's not real or it's too much risk. And I just felt like we're not talking about the actual end demand for it. The end customers buying this. So I was trying to figure out like what is the CapEx like return. So when AWS or Azure or GCP spends money on CapEx, 200 billion, like how much money should they get back? So I was talking with Gemini and it pulled together this presentation with Claude. So I want to walk you through and get your thoughts here. So we basically it's going to break down like, how much ARR, the revenue will come back and how long it'll take over for like the hyperscalers. So for every dollar of CapEx spent over a 4 to 5 year cycle, like they expect to get like between 1.5 and 2.5 back, kind of depending on, it's like why the range. Well, GPU, for example, takes a tremendous amount more power to power it. So the operating costs are higher. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, that range there. So it's like, okay, so if you're going to, for every dollar of CapEx, this is what you're going to expect to get back. And then it broke it down actually by kind of like, so per year. And so like a mature cloud where they've built out the data center and they're just fulfilling, like putting in new machines as they depreciate over every 5 to 6 year cycle, that's 35 to 50 cents. So what does that mean? So like if they invested $100 billion per year, you're getting 35 billion to 50 billion, if that makes sense, fully like mature. But the new AI build out is actually because of the higher operating costs. It's just NVIDIA's like stranglehold on the market is between 20 cents and 35 cents. So significantly different. But that was kind of interesting. So over 5 to 6 years, that's how it's going to add up to that 1.5 to $2.5. Then I was like, okay, so if that's the hyperscalers picks and shovels return, then it's like, okay, well, how much for every dollar OpenAI and Anthropic spends with a hyperscaler, how much are they going to generate? And so they were going to say this third line, the AI lab inference per $1 compute. So they're generating between $2 and $3.30. So they're actually having higher margins than the hyperscalers, which I thought was interesting. Now, everybody knows that they're just like burning cash, at least leaked financials and what we've heard according to some of the outlets. And so you've got, once you factor in the R&D, which could be for OpenAI, your Sora side quest or, other like side projects, but also the main one being training these large language models, which I believe China is really subsidizing that part of it. You factor all that in, it compresses it down. But what's what bothered me is like the inference is actually extremely profitable. So I thought that was pretty interesting, but I'll just pause there and see like, did anything like surprise you or stand out to you, like in terms of these numbers?
I think the ALM inference and revenue per compute, that's 50% to 70% gross margin on inference. I
Right?
mean, I asked Claude the other day what the margin should be, and it's that just in general on any type of markup of infra. And but yeah, this 70% is, I think, the VC number that they like to see. So interesting.
Yeah, I know it's lower than the 90% is that SaaS has, but it's still pretty profitable. So like if they can't achieve scale and revenue, that they're gonna make the money. So this is the kind of key takeaway. So there's a lot of profitability on inference. So if they can, if you remember kind of the Amazon Metas and the Microsofts, the year of efficiencies where everybody pulled back on their CapEx, pulled back on their headcount, and all of a sudden we're just spitting out wads of cash. To me, I think that could totally happen here. And so I don't know, it's just something that I'm gonna keep noodling on here, but it's like the I think it's not that like AWS and Azure and GCP aren't just selling to OpenAI and Anthropic in a vacuum. And even if if the China models or the open weight models take over, they still have to run on GPUs. So the only way that this bubble like truly collapses is if demand just like it just implodes. And I just don't see that. And there's a great quote from Nikesh, the CEO of Palo Alto, who's on a podcast recently. He said there's near infinite demand for AI intelligence. And so because there's infinite demand right now, there's no lack of demand for compute. And so I mean, it is pretty crazy. Some of the historical numbers pre quote unquote AI build out for AWS, Gemini was saying is I think closer to like 50 billion per year, and now it's at 200 billion. So it is an order of magnitude. I'm not saying that these numbers are not insane, but it's kind of if the math continues to math, these like between the three hyperscalers, you could have $1 trillion in revenue, top line.
It's bananas. Yeah, that's it makes you think maybe time to move into working and slinging some of that. So here's it's maybe tangential, but so if you use Google recently,
So I use Gemini for anything related to like YouTube videos where I think they have better access to data because a lot of times Claude won't be able to access it, but
just
not
like
Google.
yeah, just like if you pull up like your let's say Safari, or if you just go into
Search
Google and you're
bar.
yeah, if you're like going to like just normal, and I say Google like this the search engine, or if you just type into your Chrome browser, you're like, what is like the a salmon skin recipe, whatever it is. So now it gives the AI, and on your phone, you can't really, I don't want to say you can't tell, but it'll be like, oh, do you have any more questions? And so then if you type it into it, then it does the AI. So then I'm like, who's paying for that? Are they
Google.
like, yeah, but I'm subsidizing that with ad dollars. So now I was like, are ad expenses going to go up? Because I'm like, but to your point, because now I almost default to just doing that. I don't go and scroll down any further. I'm just like, oh, follow on question. But so you can literally use Gemini for free per se. Not that you can't use it for free, but like you can just, Google's just giving it to everybody.
Yeah, there are some queries. I haven't quite figured it out. If it's maybe really complex, it'll just kind of give me nothing. But I use that at work a lot just because, I'm not trying to like get flagged for sending any, IP into the LLM black box. And so I'll just search on Google and it's like go in AI mode because it's a lot about, oh, just for example, this last week, oh, what's the functionality or rocks? And then I forget that I can use quick desktop. So then I'll go back to quick desktop because it has my knowledge graph and keeps all the context. But it could just be something I'm randomly searching for. And I'm like, oh, I didn't get 100% of the answer. Let me go deeper in AI mode. It's great. I think we're in that time of experimentation where it's not really clear where the ROI is going to be, but it's that whole risk of like not having an AI box there, you lose all the traffic. And right now they're collecting all of the data. So they may be subsidizing it, but they're getting all the data and they know they can, when it's free, you are the product. And so they're at least getting the data. And then eventually they're hoping they can figure out how to monetize it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting though, because I think about that now, how many people are just defaulting to using AI and what that cost is, going back to those other slides of, but because now if you're just like typing in Google and you're my mom and you think that's your Google search and it just changed a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I think well, I guess not anymore. I mean, I think Facebook's revenue is something like 95% plus ads, but Google's probably still like 80 plus. So it's I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I mean, advertising dollars aren't going away, and it's not clear to me how is OpenAI or Anthropic going to put ads into ChatGPT, right? Or Claude.ai. I'm not quite sure. Maybe they're just going to sell our data. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I'm fine at this point that they don't put ads and I'll just pay a little bit more.
Yeah, same, but we're at a different phase in our lives.
Yeah.
You were talking about Meta, and they released some models this week that caught your eye, or and some
Or
things we're working on.
they're coding. So their competitor to Codex and Cursor. And they caught one, and I don't know how true the thread was. I have to go back. I liked it, so I can go back and pull and see if it's been community noted. But they were saying that in order to this, stand it up, they went and built their own search engine to avoid using Google and Google having any influence over their model. And so I don't know how real that is, but it's interesting that they would stand up their own. Would go build a search engine to build another tool. So they built a tool to build a tool. That's the way I was thinking about it.
Crazy. Oh, I'm gonna fire off Gemini. Go look that up. One. So it's funny you mentioned Google. Kind of just like flip side of that. Semi-analysis wrote a scathing Substack on just like how Google is essentially no longer a frontier lab. After the whole re-architecture of I forget the CEO's names, now chairman of the board, their chief scientist raised a couple $1 billion to build something. And essentially the hypothesis is Kurian, the CEO of GCP or Google Cloud, won the political battle. And it goes back to kind of the risk adverse culture of Google. And I'm not saying I know any of this, I agree with any of this. I'm just paraphrasing what was said. But I thought it was interesting, and it makes sense with corporate. So one, right, DeepMind supposedly had a ChatGPT like a year before OpenAI, but Google didn't want to release it for fear of the cannibalization, right? That's kind of the whole innovators dilemma or disruptive innovation. I forget which one. And then the just falling behind after I think Gemini 3.5, and then they're struggling to compete with the frontier of Fable 5, Opus 5, ChatGPT 5.6, Soul, Luna, etc. But they have the promise of getting the short-term revenue from being the hosting Anthropic, a competitor to Gemini, and so they're saying basically like there's a competition for compute internally, and one division wants to sell it all and make money now, but in order to really like win this battle, it's actually kind of a capex power compute story where you just have to have the most to do the most training to make sure you're at the frontier, and they've essentially seeded that because they want to make money now and they want to sell TPUs. And I was just like, hot dang, that's a bold statement.
True though.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, and they're talking about like in the next 18 months, basically 200 billion. There's like 100, GCP is going to be like 130 billion run rate and maybe 70 billion in TPUs selling into data centers. Yeah, like just think by 2030. I mean, AWS right now is at 165, I think, after their latest quarterly announcement or something. I mean, dude, numbers are staggering, dude.
Yeah.
Staggering.
So wild. Yeah, it's nuts.
It's crazy, and that's what bothers me is everybody's so focused on. I get it. The hyperscalers and the picks and shovels are the only ones with public filings, and then everybody is like, okay, well, OpenAI and Anthropic, we don't know, but it's like, who's talking to JP Morgan? Who's talking to Salesforce? If you're not talking to the end customers building with the APIs and using it, then we're missing the other half of the story. And I guess I just don't know. We're catastrophizing without having any actual customer signal.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think just from it's only what just like in the last 6 months, things have escalated in a positive way of like to your point, like the end user of the API of what they're doing, because we're doing so much, I think, more now, like leveraging the tools than we were like 6 months ago. But it's also because what like we're benefiting from what Claude and whatnot are building on behalf of the customers. So as long as I think they keep building stuff, then we find it useful. Because where I'm going with this is like Claude Tag, like it's so super helpful.
Yeah,
And I see it too with like our engineering team because they'll have again open PRs and stuff, small stuff like that. But to your point, like how are the end users using it? I think it's still the early innings.
I agree. And I think we will be more productive in our tasks. Where I struggle is I think it's going to just turn into a productivity tax, though, in the sense that everyone has Office. Just like I'm not going to work somewhere that doesn't have Office. And so you're just going to have all these Gen AI tools. And while we might be able to do more paperwork, just like you can create more content for inbound, but everyone else can now too. So your revenue doesn't grow necessarily. It only grows relative to your peers that aren't adopting it. So it's going to be interesting where, the fast adopters, people that can move quickly are going to absorb more of the revenue. So then that's why I think it's not going to stop because no one's going to be, no one's going to want to be the laggard because the laggards are not going to move as quickly because now this is a tax. If you don't pay the tax, you're slow. If you're slow, you don't, you get out featured. And so it's going to be interesting how that shakes out. There's a good LinkedIn post, forget the guy's name, but it was kind of interesting. The SaaS apocalypse, was overblown, but the economic principles of it, if it's cheaper to make something, the price is going to go down. So it's not that like SaaS is going away. It's just that every existing SaaS company now has way more competition and like a lower barrier to entry, and that which is going to drive the price points down of the top line, and therefore their top line and their margins, and that's what the valuations are based on. And I was like, that's kind of hard to argue with. So it's unless you can sell more units, right? Because that was the whole like economies of scale. I mean, in a factory, it drives the price down, but then you get more units. But I don't know if they're going to be selling more seats.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are tough discussions. And I don't even know if it's philosophically, because I sit and I think about if somebody was to approach me and I probably would be one of the key decision makers and or have historically been, I'll just use Salesforce, for example. If somebody was to approach me today and be like, hey, we have this new great AI CRM that does all these magical things, has all these cool bells and whistles that I find useful or maybe help me with my daily activities. Maybe I'm just stuck in my ways or old, but it would take a lot to get me to move off of Salesforce.
Oh,
And
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. So
no. To,
continue.
to your point, yes, they can come in and they can build these other CRMs, but then, and maybe we're not even enterprise, right? And I don't have a huge procurement department to go through. Yeah, I'm just like a Series B startup, but I'm still like cool little CRM, but I'm fine with. I'm good because hey, I get my Slack discount. It's integrated with Slack. Yes, yours can do that, but not natively or whatever. I don't know. For me, it just seems like so I get the argument. Like yes, there can be more, and there. So I'm not like a huge SaaS apocalypse, but at the same time, I'm not like I don't see a lot of companies coming in and being viable unless they're just like solopreneurs or like 3-man teams that can sustain off of 2 million ARR a year.
Yeah, it's a spectrum, obviously, or distribution, and also a life cycle. Because if you were a Salesforce customer, or if Salesforce had a customer that didn't implement it very well, very effectively, it wasn't a great match for the use case, and then someone comes in and displaces Salesforce, either one, Salesforce didn't do a good job, right? Like servicing the customer and they were at risk and they went to a like for like competitor. But I think also there's a chance now that maybe somebody else comes in and builds a more bespoke CRM for manufacturing, right? And so those customers are already kind of at risk and churn. But that also precludes like Salesforce could easily be building, FTEs and better features to like go after and go deeper in the same market. So it's not like they're going to be standing still, right? So it's hard to say that they're going to just be demise because they can move faster too. But just bigger companies, they are more bureaucratic, and I think they have more paper, red tape, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, even the new guys are going to be under the same competition because there could be a next. There's always a next, and so it's kind of that like constant capitalistic marathon of
Yeah.
there's your competition's always out there waiting for you. Your margin is my opportunity.
Yeah. 100%. To your point, like, I think if the Salesforce wasn't meeting your need, that's where like HubSpot came in. And so like HubSpot was like, in my mind, is like the gateway drug to CRMs. But
Yeah.
then if HubSpot doesn't work for you, this like, little custom AI. But to your point, like maybe there's just like these bespoke, but I know we went off on a tangent, but yeah, I think it's going to be hard to, but again, there could be, I'm sure you and I could, if we'd probably be happy having like a 10 million ARR 5-man company selling some novel niche SaaS.
Uh, I mean, as long as you're profitable and don't have a VC backing you who's trying to get you to make 100x, you can have a lifestyle business with these things, I think. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. So kind of, yeah, it'll be interesting how it shakes out because I've got one customer that's a little bit more buy versus build, and I've got another one that's hardcore build over buy, and they're both customers using CRM, and so it's just interesting. All of the building has technical debt, and so it's cool stuff versus buying now, but is it going to be that cool and worth it, or is it going to just turn into this massive bloated self-managed GTM software stack that no one wants to deal with? Or your CRO comes in, it's like, I can't sell like this. Every time I go and I want a new feature, you say I can't do it. Our competition can, and they use Salesforce or HubSpot. Like, what are we doing? Like, time will tell. But
I mean, isn't that just like the standard like timeline of all software? Because I think of like the Amazon Connect. I remember there was like a couple times we were hard selling that, and I had a few opportunities, and every opportunity that I was driving it, I was dealing with customers who had homegrown solutions and were like, this has just got too much. We're done. There's the homegrown one is like too much of a headache. We can't do this anymore. We just need something that innovates on its own, like, and the features come and we don't have to build the features.
yeah, the longer we're in it, AI just feels like another technology shift. It doesn't feel as disruptive. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think, if we had gotten Fable 5 18 months ago, what would we have thought in 2024? Or I guess, yeah, what 2026 summer would be like if we had Fable 5 intelligence back then? We would have thought the world, 20% unemployment, cures for cancer, and we have none of that right now. It's
You had one good comment that the productivity. So is it just we get more productive, and is it just we just become extremely productive?
it's a, it's interesting. So it in my mind, I should have paid more attention in operations in my MBA, but you can be really productive, but if the output for the company doesn't go up, then so it depends on how you measure it. If you measure it at the employee level or the company level.
And that is because when you were going through like the productivity, like it was a couple minutes ago, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, so we could become super productive, or I could have a super productive like HR team, finance team, teams that don't really impact I don't want to say the inputs, but the famous Amazon thing is you can't control your outputs, you can control your inputs. But at the same time, if all my productivity is just for people that aren't really generating revenue, is there in my, to your point, if my revenue is not growing, if those guys, if that productivity isn't impacting the actual like growth of the product, then what's the improvement? Yes, like
It
I have
does.
workers that are like can do their work in 4 hours versus 8.
Exactly. Exactly. So it goes back to reorganizing the company and the systems and the processes around accelerating the output versus creating new bottlenecks within the current system because all the constraints are kind of like the same, and then parts are speeding up, but like the bottlenecks are still exist, so the output for the firm doesn't go up, right? So same, back to the theory of constraints. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But and it's interesting. So we were texting back and forth. So the GTM engineering one said, I think this is the Iconic had this, and it was high AI adopters generate 2 times more revenue per GTM full-time employee compared to medium and low adopters. Like a massive difference, 2x, right? You know, who wouldn't want $2 instead of $1, right? Or 200 instead of 100. And I think this guy works for Clay. It was interesting. I guess a private equity firm brought him in to present in front of a bunch of CROs for portfolio companies. And he goes, one of the CROs told him that he was pausing his AI initiative. He wanted to take a step back, thinking through where AI should actually fit in their GTM before moving forward. So they already know that like the 2x exists. And he's like, I'm not saying pause is bad, but he said, I kept my face neutral, but was thinking this guy doesn't know how to use AI himself. He's never automated a single workflow with his own hands, and he's going to sit down and decide where AI belongs to his organization. And
That was,
it was so good. It's like
it was.
that, that sounds about right. That's how leadership works.
And I tried to, I don't know why Substack wouldn't let me. I was trying to quote that so I could retweet it because I thought that was like, it was so precise because it would let me quote that little section, but it wouldn't at the start. So the context wasn't there. But yeah. And I think there's a lot of people and, orgs that operate that way.
Dude, there's so many. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you have to do it I can do it from the Chrome browser. That's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. Does a little image, creates that little thing.
So good.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that. That's cool. Yeah, and people wonder why we're not getting more out of AI. It's the human element, It's like someone has to kind of internalize it. Not someone, all the people do, and then make the decision, and then this is the direction. So it's if a tree falls in the wood, if your AI does your entire job, but nobody opens the email, does it matter? It doesn't. It just costs a lot of tokens. So, private equity, good luck. They're the ones dealing with the SaaS apocalypse. What did you think of the Airtable acquisition, man?
Yeah. Yeah. I, there's like, it's the best of times. It was the worst of times. I feel like there's these two different worlds happening right now where like things are so great. And I'm speaking from the crypto world, like things are very bleak. They're going under like every day. And when you see the Airtable, they're not crypto, but it's, I think you highlighted a few things in the article of how much they raised and what they were valued at and where they sit now. And it's like,
Let me
the,
read
the,
it real. So let me just read this. So Wall Street Journal, Airtable acquisition is a kick in the gut for software unicorns and their backers. So they were acquired at an enterprise value of 1.29 billion, down from their peak valuation of 11.7. So down, almost 90%. And they had cash. So like they had a massive amount of cash. So it was yeah, it was is this like a re-rating of all software, or is this just like they were tapped out? The founder was like, "Look, I want to get out of the business." Like,
this is my biased opinion. And if people working at Airtable probably won't like this, but it was a weird, horrible product. I thought it just felt before vibe coding was vibe coding, just the way to use it, it was just like felt low code. I know they try to position themselves also as like a low code type thing, but it felt like it was low coded because it was just weird the way I didn't ever think of it as like real software.
yeah, I used it a couple times. I think it was basically, a database for people that didn't want to learn how to use a database. Was kind of the way it was explained, and then Claude Code and vibe coding came along and basically obfuscated the need for understanding what databases are. And you're just like, just build it. And they're like, okay. But dude, look at this is Airtable sold at enterprise value 2.7 times its annual recurring revenue. So 480 million ARR growing 20% year over year. Like that's not terrible. It kind of sucks when you raised over $1 billion, but it's
Repeat those numbers one more time.
so Airtable They're sold at 2.7 times its annual recurring revenue, which was 480 million as of
Yeah.
June, with a growth rate of 20% year over year.
Okay. Yeah. So not bad. One comment and you made was like, oh, it was a database for people who didn't want a database. So it was literally like the rebirth of Access for those of us that are old enough to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, in web form that works. Yeah, with it. Yeah. I didn't think it was a
That's
bad product. I just didn't have a great case for it. So,
yeah, it just felt, I don't know, it always felt just janky to me. It was just like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, we will tell. So it'll be interesting. Another quote from Nikesh on Palo Alto, and then we'll maybe talk about the security thing, close out. So he was saying long-term average, long-term, comma, average intelligence will essentially be free and it will continue to get better over time. Exceptional intelligence will be paid for. Like it will be finite and it will cost money. And he had some interesting comments on, he believes a lot of the compute is still actually going towards the consumers and not enterprises. And that's the subsidy over there. He also had some interesting comments on all these, like, I think, so Anthropic, OpenAI, and even Meta now have had their LLMs get loose from jail, their to sandboxes and hack people. Like this, like it feels like a PR stunt. And I don't know how many more times this can happen before it becomes negligence and there's lawsuits. Like you're gonna have to stop testing. Like what the f are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry I burned your house down. I was testing if this was like fire retardant or not. Like what the dude? like, like granted, they're not stealing the data, but it still capture the flag. So it's like access, but I don't know, man. What do you think, dude? It's kind of ridiculous.
yeah, kind of sounds PR. It does a lot of times feel PR and I don't know. It's,
RLM is so powerful that you should buy it. And here's an example. We can't even control it. Imagine what it could do for your business.
yeah,
It's
yeah, no, but yeah, exciting times. Reading about them, all the breakouts are pretty interesting. It's like sci-fi novels.
yeah. I don't, yeah. There I'm going to try to write about this, but there's been a lot of acquisitions around identity security by security companies like Palo Alto and CrowdStrike and Splunk and others. And it's not in your traditional enterprise employee auth, like an Okta or an Entra or used to be Active Directory. It's all related to kind of identity intrusion detection response for non-human identities. And so trying to find the perimeter for all these agents once they start being able to, be active and show agency and act on your behalf without checking with you. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it is still really scary, the whole supply chain risk for software. That just means all the packages, all the code. Because if like Kimi and the other Chinese models can do this, there's just so many vulnerabilities out there. It wouldn't be that hard. They would just, if they wanted to be malicious and just point it at a system, they're going to get in. That's the only kind of terrifying thing here. So I think there's going to be more cyber breaches, not less, which I feel like there should be a better concerted effort for the labs to like help open source protect itself. Like, I don't know. It's like kind of crazy.
Yeah, maybe the first thing every company should do with AI is just run security analysis.
Right?
That's here, go try and hack us or go try and, find every flaw that you can. There's the first use case for AI to deploy at your company.
Yeah. Pen testing. Just try to mess our stuff up. Chaos monkey for security. Yeah. It seems logical. So, oof. So, well, I think that brings us to time. So if you enjoyed what you heard, check us out. Updated the website, got a lot of good podcasts flowing on that. Check out our Substack. Ooh, can't talk today. Give us a follow and a like. See you next week.